Alexa, turn the lights on, please.
Okay.
Oh,
my gosh. Yeah.
let there be light. Let there be light.
Well, maybe Alexa will take over surgery eventually.
I would like to get back to our conversation because my one opportunity. Alexa, please turn the lights off.
Okay.
Gee, I feel important next to you, Tony. I've got this power base.
No.
Now, getting back to the serious side,
Yes.
you mentioned children.
Yep.
You have 8 children. So you've
Yes, I
been
do.
there, wonderful. We'll talk a little bit about
Yep.
the family soon. But when you're with some of the patients, and I had the privilege of sitting through one of your presentations where these children have got the cleft palates, they've got eyes that are in the wrong area, the nose, the chin, the head, the shape of the head. Emotionally, have you ever, because you've got wonderful children, you know, healthy and happy, have you ever shed a tear privately when you've looked at these people and thought, I want to help and I'm not sure sometimes?
Absolutely. I mean, the very worst of the deformities are so incredible. It's interesting, occasionally we get children with these deformities, and some of them come in from overseas and people are raising money to bring them in and stuff. And we ask the media, you know, would they help with this?
Yes.
And we've actually had the media say, we just can't put this child on the front page of our newspaper.
Yeah.
It's
Too confronting.
It's too confronting for the public to see. And it is, it's just amazing. And a lot of our really, really bad cases are like that. And it is incredibly distressing. And it's incredibly distressing for the parents, especially if the child's born that way. And some of the mothers don't even know if they can take the child home.
Well, let's talk about a couple of those. Going back to 2009, I think, the Trishna and Krishna.
Oh yes, yes.
That
yeah.
was worldwide news, but
Yeah.
there was a lot happening before the media became part of the story. There was a
yes.
long time before the actual story came out, and then they followed the journey through the operation and the aftermath.
Yes. Well,
Tell us about that, how long it was that they were actually here.
well,
before.
they were here for over 2 years.
Yeah.
And I think people didn't realise that. We were asked whether we could help, and I got a phone call from Bangladesh from a charity worker, asked if we could help, and I did say, are the children all right? Oh yes, they're fine, but they're joined at the head and everything like that. And I said, well look, we don't know. We don't know, but the only way we could find out is if we get them over and do appropriate tests and investigations. I had never dealt with conjoined twins at the head before, and perhaps I didn't know what we were getting into.
That's an admission.
Oh, without any doubt it was. And anyway, we got permission to bring them over, and unfortunately when they arrived they were not all right, they were dying.
So that would have been a
Yeah.
risk, even the flight to
The
get
flight
them to Melbourne.
the flight was a huge risk too, but we didn't realise that, and I'm sure the airline that brought them out realises how lucky they were that nothing drastic happened on that flight. But the moment they arrived, they virtually had to go straight to intensive care because one of the children was in heart failure. And of course, if one died, both died.
Both died, yeah.
And then we had to assemble a team of neurosurgeons and anaesthetists and surgeons and work out how this could be done and whether it should be done, because the risks of one or both dying was very high. And of course, you don't just do surgery unless there's a good chance and it's the right thing. And so there was quite a lot of ethical considerations to be made as well. And the whole team was brought in. I was just a small cog of the team.
So you have to get them to a stage of reasonable health before you go to the next stage.
That's right, and the intensive care people were fantastic, and it worked out that the heart failure was being caused because one child was shunting blood into the other, and so the other's heart was failing because it was being overprimed. It's like force feeding the heart, which couldn't cope.
So it's too big a statement to say if they'd stayed at home, they would have passed away.
No, there's no doubt in the world that they were within probably days, if not weeks at the most, from death. They were going to die. There's no doubt.
We'll hit the fast forward. 2 years of work,
Yep.
getting them healthy.
Yep.
2 beautiful baby girls there.
Yep.
Then the decision comes, we're going to do it.
Oh yes, and there were a lot of hiccups along the way, but then the decision was made, we're going to separate them, and then the preparations were then made for that. And the first thing that had to be done was the shunt that was causing the heart failure had to be blocked off, and that was done by a wonderful radiologist, Peter Mitchell, by threading little wires and coils up through the circulation and blocking it off in the brain, which was in itself remarkable. And that worked. And then our neurosurgical team, which was 2 of them, Virginia Meixner and Alison Ray, did a whole series of operations every few months to cut vessels and get collateral circulations going in a different direction. And we had to make sure that how were we going to close these defects, because if you're joined by something that's the size of a saucer, okay, then, and you cut it, that means you've got a defect in the baby's head the size of a saucer on both sides. So where are you going to get the new covering for the brain, the new skin, the new bone?
Where did it come from?
Well, there's reconstructive techniques. So the skin comes from tissue expansion. And I was lucky enough to be in the United States training when tissue expansion started. And saw the first sort of major presentation on that. And we started doing it after watching this. And then I actually brought that back to Australia in 1978. And the major use for tissue expansion then was to reconstruct breasts after cancer. But basically tissue expansion is just, we see it every day in a pregnant mum.
Sure.
I mean,
the belly comes out.
Yeah, and all that skin, well, you hope it goes back, but as a lot of mums will tell you, it sometimes doesn't. But basically that's, that tissue can be used.
Yeah.
So by putting a balloon in under the skin and slowly blowing it up over a period of weeks, you can make a huge amount of skin, and then use that to close it. And that's exactly what we did with the twin girls.
How long was the operation?
The final operation was a lot longer than we expected. I think it was nearly 32 hours in total. And the reason for that was that they'd had a few hiccups along the way, and some of the vessels that had been divided in the brain had actually reconnected. And so the poor neurosurgeons were there trying literally to divide these vessels. Every time you divide a vessel in the brain, it's like a mini stroke. So if you're dividing the wrong one or in the wrong area, then you're causing damage. And this was all done under a microscope. So for every centimetre that they did, it probably took half an hour under the microscope. And so they were nearly 20 hours in total dividing that area of brain.
And they're
without
away,
the
so it's not a shift. It's the surgeons who start or the surgeons who finish. You don't go away and
No, well, you got to have
a little bit of.
you got to have loo breaks and coffee breaks.
But you're not
and
having a
stuff
sleep
like that.
break.
No, and then once that was done, yes, but people teamed it a bit, and then once that was done, we had our plans of then how to divide, use the skin, make used artificial porous polyethylene to make an artificial skull at that time and get them closed, and it all went very well, fortunately.
It's interesting you said we, because none of it is about Tony. You're not a person who uses I. You talk about teams, you give credit to everybody else. How many in the team? How many people would have been involved in the let's just say the last part of the journey, the operation?
Yeah, we had 3 craniofacial surgeons, 2 neurosurgeons there, assistants, surgeons, and 4 anaesthetists.
2 for each?
2 anaesthetists for each child, even while they were joined together. And every time the children had to have an X-ray or an MRI, it had to be done under general anaesthetic. So that's 4 anaesthetists. And then you've got to get them into the machine so that they don't fit.
Yeah.
The machines are made for one
person.
Yeah. So the whole hospital was involved. The orderlies, the nursing staff, everything, the intensive care, everything had to be thought out. So there was a coordinating team of nurses just looking after the logistics of what was going on. There were planning meetings sort of once a week to make sure that everything was going right. It was really a major organisation, and then the whole hospital clicked.
Yeah.
And what it did for the hospital once they were separated and it worked was unbelievable. The esprit de corps of the hospital,
the world stage,
they just felt so good. They so good, and I think and hospitals need that now and again. So it worked out well for the twins, it worked out well for the hospital, and it was
2 beautiful little girls with the chance of leading a normal life, separated. The operating team's there, they move back into intensive care. But then there's a lot more before you start doing high fives and saying, hey, we've done it.
Well, that's right. If you look back, because what we did was a lot of research on all the twins that have been done elsewhere and things, and there was a very high death rate, and then also there was a very high rate of neural damage. Okay, so the real aim was not just to separate them, but to not have them neurologically affected, and neither of them deteriorated. So this was one of the big success stories in conjoined twin separation anywhere, and the credit to that, I think, goes to the planning and particularly the neurosurgeons, the 2 neurosurgeons just being so meticulous, so careful, thinking it through, and they well, I guess that was the fine art. We sort of, the craniofacial surgeons, we felt a bit like the crude builders, We put up the frame and the roof and
they do,
and and everything like that. But they really did the microscopic stuff.
Does it build a closer bond? Because obviously you respect everybody who works at the hospital. I'm not just talking about the surgeons, but when you're in a situation like that, and it's life-changing, world-making. Does the respect and the knowledge and I'll use the word friendship, because you work with people to get respect, not to be friends, but
absolutely.
Does it bring you closer together?
Oh, absolutely. And that's what I like about the Children's Hospital. Getting back to that, originally what we were talking about was I actually enjoy going to work because of the type of people that I work with, not just the patients. And everybody loves going to an enjoyable workplace. And also, it's nice to know that you're doing good in your work. You know what I mean?
I know what you mean.
It's
Why are you still
morally
working
good.
60 hours a week? Because you're putting in 12 hours a day, 5 days a week. Why are you still doing it?
I think probably because I'm a bit mad, and it's probably a habit, but I actually enjoy being busy. And if you've been doing it for 50 years, which I have now,
Yes.
then it's a bit hard to get out of the habit. And in fact, I'm now thinking how I'm winding down, and I'm finding that very confronting. It's not the easiest thing to do.